Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. President Trump secured another endorsement from a former Democrat yesterday, just hours after he honored 13 fallen service members who were killed in a terror attack following the United States' disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. President Biden remains on permanent vacation. It's permanent vacation. Will we ever see President Biden again? Will he? We don't know. Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't there either. She was really busy. She was laser focused on trying to schedule her first interview. I'm not even kidding. Politico today reporting that you would not believe the number of machinations around this, that she's spending her days with a light schedule, doing some debate prep, and trying to figure out to whom she will grant her first interview. That's why she couldn't go honor the fallen service members in person. Just too busy discussing which bootlicker will I give my feet to. They are reporting in Politico's playbook this morning, campaign staff, this is a quote, have been asking reporters who they think she should talk to. Oh my God. I'm sure they do this for Trump too. Hey, what do you think? I'm sure campaign staff is asking all the reporters who would be a good person to interview him. They can't even decide this. They can make no decisions. Plus, VP Harris has flip-flopped on yet another issue, and it's a big one, that just years ago she called a vanity project of former President Trump. The biggest question right now, who's running this country? She's not in office. I don't know where she is. She's sitting there talking about which reporter she should talk to. And President Biden is nowhere to be found. I think he's back in the comatose position on a beach in Rehoboth. Joining me today for the full show is Stu Burguiere. He's host of Stu Does America, and Stephen L. Miller, host of the Versus Media podcast, better known on X as Red Steez. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 330 academic programs as of December 2023, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having us, Megan. Appreciate it.
Hi, Megan. Biden's dead. Let's just put that out there right at this point. He's gone.
Breaking news.
There's a whole Doug in the woods in Delaware. He's gone. If anything, this election's taught me we don't need presidents or journalists.
I know. It's really true. I actually feel a little safer in some ways knowing that he's not doing anything and she's not doing anything. I don't know who their staffers are, but they do scare me. But nothing big has been pushed through as an agenda item for the past couple of months, and I feel better about that.
You know, I certainly, anytime you can have dysfunction in government that makes them stop doing things, I'm pretty much for it. But I am concerned about the decisions that are being made right now. I mean, last night there was this, over the past 24 hours, this big attack from Russia on Ukraine. And Ukraine's response to this is basically to complain about the restrictions we're putting on them for using the weapons we're giving them. And they're very upset about this. And they want to be able to fire these weapons deeper into Russia to target different types of locations inside the country. And that decision is being made. We've crossed these red lines that we said we would never cross over and over again in that particular conflict. And Joe Biden, in theory, is supposed to be making these decisions. And if there's any clearer path between ourselves right now and all of us and all of our children being, exploding in a nuclear blast, other than us making the wrong decisions on what's going on with Russia, I don't know what it is. Those are major decisions. Who is making them? We're getting reports that he's getting into SUVs visibly shaking. He's not giving us anything. We have no idea who the president seems to be right now. I don't know if it's Antony Blinken. I don't know if it's Kamala Harris. But those sort of decisions are being made, and it's terrifying because they are massive consequences.
Following up on that report you just mentioned, Emily Gooden, now of Daily Mail, formerly, I think, of Real Clear Politics, reporting that as President Biden disembarked Air Force One 1 week ago today, the early hours of Tuesday morning in California last week, he was, quote, visibly shaking. Approaching 5:30 a.m. East Coast time, the president had been awake for almost 24 hours. This is the morning after his DNC speech. Walking slowly down the plane stairs, he struggled to step into the SUV, waiting to take him to the 8,000-acre Santa Barbara ranch where he and his family have just enjoyed a week-long vacation. One of his Secret Service agents moved to shield him from the watching cameras before giving him a helpful boost into the car. It's tough to see on the video that we have, other than because it's dark. He's going very slow, very slow. But again, this is a reporter, Emily Gooden, who is on site and reporting that he was, quote, visibly shaking, and that First Lady Jill Biden watched, quote, visibly concerned. Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics has been pulling his schedule every day, and it's just out of town, 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 out of town. And while out of town, he's doing absolutely nothing other than receiving the president's daily brief, which you have to receive. That's really not up to you. They have an obligation to present it to you. He's doing nothing, you guys. And this is weeks now, weeks on end. As Ben Shapiro put it, he said, following the bouncing media narrative around this, January 21 through June of 24. Biden's totally fine. You're a liar if you say otherwise. June of 24 after the debate through July 21st. Biden is senile and selfish. He needs to drop out. July 21st through present. Biden is like George Washington. He's fine. Stop asking where he is. That's about it, Steve.
Yeah, the journalists did their jobs for about 2 whole weeks there. And, people are saying this whole thing with Kamala and interview, you'd have to realize that they don't care about any of this. They accomplish their goal, which is to basically break the old man's arm and get him out of this race. And beyond that, there's been no questions about anything about who knew about his decline, why were journalists, who was in the decision-making process of journalists pre-submitting their questions, which we have photographic evidence of. It's basically just he's gone. And that's kind of what I said. I mean, he's dead. It's like he might as well not even exist anymore, because the more that you ask these questions about, okay, why were we all called conspiracy theorists a month and a half ago? Barack Obama's leading him off of the stage, and his own advisors are saying that that's not what it was. And then Obama speaking about Kamala Harris at the convention. And any mention of Biden, any time that they wheel this guy out, is just a reminder of, one, how they lied to us for about the most of his term. And two, it's a reminder that they installed a candidate who hasn't received a single primary vote. And we can't have that, because that moves on joy. That gets in the way of joy. And we don't need to have any more of this dour old man and this guy who's going to die in front of the country at any second, because we're all onto joy now. And so any incumbency onto joy must be pushed out of the frame. It must be forgotten about. It must be, like I said, dropped into the woods in Delaware, Soprano style. And that's what really this is about. That's why they had Joe Biden speak on Monday. Instead of this passing the torch, you'd think Biden would speak right before Kamala Harris and say, here she comes, and here we are. No, they had him speak on Monday, and then they threw him into the trunk of an SUV and drove him off to never be heard from again. And that's really what this is about. This has to be Kamala as the upstart candidate. And any reminder that Joe Biden is half dead and weakened at Bernie's presidency is a reminder that, one, she knew about it. Two, she was part of it. And three, the media has a harder time of selling her as the joy candidate.
And the change candidate. So I'd feel better that she wasn't doing anything and he's not doing anything, Stu, if I didn't have this behind the scenes glimpse a couple of months ago at one of the largest teams at the White House. This is the comm staff. Just look at it. Just take it in for the listening audience. These are
Well,
young
who's running
women,
the country.
not much older than my daughter Yardley, who is 13. I mean, they are young. There's a couple of guys in the back. There's no way these people are over the age of 25. And they're diverse. They've got all all the boxes are checked. And this appears to be who's running the country. Okay. So I don't feel better. I'd feel better if we had somebody I knew we elected, or at least half of the country wanted. I don't know who those people are, and I have zero faith in their ability to make decisions on things like Israel.
That's a great point. The picture you showed looks like what happens when Stephen Colbert wins an Emmy and the writing staff comes up and there's like 87 people, and you're like, they needed that many people to come up with that show. I think this is typical stuff that they're doing, and part of me actually there's a small part of me leading into this that was wondering, maybe the media has just degraded so much. Like maybe it's just had disintegrated so much that the ability to even do this job no longer existed. The fact that you could be won over by someone, from the last era of Ben Rhodes or that staff of people you just showed, the fact that you could be won over to write articles on their behalf is sort of pathetic. And you wonder, is it just incompetence? Is it just that the industry is disintegrated and they no longer have the ability? But then we saw, as Stephen pointed out, a 2-week golden era of journalism where all of a sudden they were on everything. They had people in every room. They had sources everywhere. They were able to completely change into this like movie style journalism where they would solve every crime. And it was incredible. I mean, it was legitimately impressive to watch for about 2 weeks, and then they just shut it right off. So the worst possibility is the correct one, which is they just don't want to do this job. What they want is Kamala Harris or some other left winger in office. They want Donald Trump to lose, really, no matter what. And at the end of the day, they're going to intentionally run interference for the Harris campaign, maybe until the very end. She's already been able to go through 1/3 of the campaign she needs to run of 15 weeks. 1/3 of it, she's already avoided any questions. God only knows if they get one in the last 10.
It's truly like, someone is in a coma, and it's very sad they're in a coma, but then they wake up. You're like, oh, they're back. Yay. I've got my family member back. And then 2 weeks later, they're back in the coma. That was like a bad, it's just like one temporary dream. They actually are in the coma. That's the media,
it's a terrible Lifetime movie. Mm-hmm.
Look what they could do. Yes, we've all seen them many times. I'm old enough to remember the After School movie. That's what we got when we came home in the 70s when us latchkey kids, when our parents were basically not raising us. We had like Jimmy and Christy McNichol waiting for us. Okay, I diverge. To the subject of who's running the White House right now and those young people, those 21-year. I mean, honestly, if they walked into your liquor store, you would demand 2 forms of ID. You'd be like, I could call the cops. We could have them check. Look what they think substitutes for actual politicking, actual campaigning, giving interviews, holding press conferences. Instead, they're going a different route. I give you SOT 17 and their latest ad for her.
Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs? Those black jobs.
Donald Trump is an unserious man.
One of those black jobs. Those black jobs. One of those. Who's going to tell him?
Okay, Stephen, I guess this is going to make the young folks rush to the polls. The young folks never rush to the polls, but if you hit them on TikTok with black jobs, off they're going to go.
Yeah, that was Michelle Obama during the convention. That got a huge howl, except again, right now that job is being held by an 81-year-old corpse who's a white guy. And so again, these are all like meant to, and this is what the Harris campaign is about. It's about viral moments. It's about one-liners. We're seeing this now back and forth with her debate where she doesn't want the mics cut. They want to have interruptions so she can use her girl boss I'm speaking line, which they've already pre-printed T-shirts out. They have the emails ready to go. And everybody sees through this. That's what I think was so interesting about this change in the debate demands is just about every single person on Twitter X yesterday said that this is so she can have a viral moment. And that's really what this campaign is dependent upon, because I've said this before, Kamala Harris might might as well not exist. This is a campaign being run through the media and press releases. There's no person here. This is a machine of Democrat operatives. You have the Biden people squabbling with the Obama people, and then Kamala Harris's sister over who to sit down for an interview. When JD Vance goes on 4 morning shows, and it's like, I'll do an interview. Sure, call me up. I'll be there. And that's kind of a normal politician. And that's what's so revealing about this is an attempt to create kind of, Poochie from The Simpsons, which is this new hot thing that everyone can get behind with 1 or 2 lines. And then, we'll see how the election goes. And then maybe it works. And if it doesn't, Poochie's going to return back to her home planet. And so that's really all this is about. I see this, caterwauling over she won't give debate, she won't give interviews. That's because she might as well not even exist. This is kind of candidate ChatGPT. And they are terrified. They are terrified of what she is going to say. They all know this. She had one moment, 2 days ago, where she was on the tarmac and a reporter shouted out to her, "Hey, Kamala, what's next?" And she laughed and said, "I'm going to walk up those stairs." Yeah, and it's moments like that where the normies kind of go, she can't just turn this off and on. She is baked. This is who she is. And she might literally be baked. And so they can't just turn this off and on. And that's what they're terrified of, that at every given moment, she's going to walk up and give a laughing word salad. And that's, when David Plouffe, Obama's guy, kind of gets the tranquilizer dart ready. And so she doesn't even have to exist. This is, like you said, this is going to be a campaign run through 9-second TikToks, viral moments. She's going to just desperately hope to get 1 or 2 lines in the debate, like she did with Joe Biden when she called him a racist and said, "That little girl was me." And they already had a T-shirt ready to go. And that's who she is. She is not
on the subject of her being baked. Person. I do want to follow up on that because we're researching her backstory, and her dad, Donald Harris.
At least somebody is.
Yeah, who was an open Marxist. He's from Jamaica. And when she was trying to build her street cred as like, I'm with the Black community, don't worry, I'm one of you and I'm gonna look out for you. She was saying that she was asked, it might have been on the Charlemagne show, about whether she'd smoked pot. And she was like, "Dude, I'm Jamaican." And her dad actually, who's like MIA, where's the dad? He's alive. The mom died, but the dad's alive. Let's hear from him. What does he think? The dad made a statement calling her out, saying, this is so inappropriate. Like, how embarrassing for her when she comments on her Jamaican background, to bring up pot smoking. That's what she wants people to think of when she thinks of the Jamaican people. It was actually kind of interesting. So there's definitely something going on there between the two of them that I'd love to know more about. We're looking into it. But to your point about baked, brought that up for me. Here's the thing, Stu. Stephen's totally right. Whenever she does speak, it's so cringy. That remark about what's next, I'm going to walk up these stairs, is so telling. She's so dumb. She's just not clever. She couldn't think of like an immediate clever retort, right? Like she actually said the very next thing that was going to happen. That's the best she could come up with. And this is yet another example that's making the rounds today. It's a flashback from just April, not that long ago, when she was asked by Spectrum News what it would do to race relations if Trump repeals some of these DEI policies that she and Joe Biden have infiltrated the entire government with. Just listen to the emptiness. This is the longer version of, I'm going to walk up these stairs. Listen.
I think it's really important that we as Americans always embrace our history, the parts that we're proud of and the parts that we're not proud of, but that we can't forget. And we should all agree that we should teach history. We should learn history if we're to ever have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future.
Oh, God.
And that means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. It means acknowledging the importance of the fact that everyone should have equal opportunity to compete and equity. And then, of course, inclusion, that, hey, let's look around the room and see who's not here, and did we leave the door open?
Okay, I just want to break this down. So, by the way, credit to you, Stephen L. Miller, because you're the one who flagged this after Charlie Spearing flagged it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, candidate didn't do the reading. That's who she constantly comes off of. She constantly comes off as someone who got called on in class and didn't do the reading.
It's like, I don't know if it's a verbal tick. It's a cover, I guess. It's a cover for her know-nothingness. But let's just look at this. Okay, I have this, the transcript of it in front of me. What's going to happen? What's your response to Trump's promise to repeal DEI? Why wouldn't she just say what the Democrats are always preaching to us? Diversity, equity, inclusion is important. If you can see it, you can be it. Representation matters. For too long, the corporate boardrooms have looked this one way and little kids, whatever. They're nonsense that they're always saying about that shit. They won't say it's illegal. So it really does need to be repealed. It's discrimination against whites, which technically is unconstitutional. So they didn't say that. But let's just break down what she says. I think it's really important that we as Americans, filler. It's really important. She's building up. She's trying to think. It's really important. We as Americans, filler, always embrace our history. More filler here. The parts we're proud of and the parts we're not proud of. She always does this, but that we can't forget. It's like redundant. And we should all agree that we should teach history, because so far the assignment is embrace history and teach history. And then she adds, and we should learn history if we're ever to have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future. It's all filler. There are no calories in here. This is processed food we are consuming. And that means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. Okay, so why should the DEI thing stay? Because diversity is important. It means acknowledging the importance of the fact, filler, that everyone should have equal opportunity to compete, and equity, which she doesn't define because we all know what she's defined it in the past. It means we all must end in the same place. She said that repeatedly. We ran a budded soundbite last week. Equity in Kamala Harris's mind means everyone must end in the same place, irrespective of where they began, irrespective of hard work. And then, of course, inclusion. So now she's just spitting back the words that DEI stands for. She's managed to get out diversity, equity, and inclusion. She said absolutely nothing. And then finally she ends with, hey, let's look around the room and see who's not here and didn't leave the door open. Totally inarticulate encapsulation in that last phrase. At least it was an attempt to explain an answer to the question, but every other word was filler, while her weak mind struggled to figure out what to say, Stu.
Megyn, that was just mean, what you just did. And I want people to notice it. Calling out and trying to understand the words of Kamala Harris certainly is not joyful, Megyn, and I'm disappointed in you for that. You never know what she's saying because she doesn't know what she's saying. She does have, and you broke it down so well, that is her defense mechanism. Her defense mechanism is to just repeat the words and say very basic platitudes that often turn into that word salad thing that we've all noticed over the years. When she first came into, when she was running for president and became a vice president eventually, back in the day, we started up veepthoughts.com, which is like a collection of all of these moments with the old Saturday Night Live Deep Thoughts sort of model, because so much of it is completely incoherent. She doesn't know where she's going. She's kind of like improvising in the middle of the sentences to try to find a way out. She's like trying to find her way through a maze on a placemat at a diner. And it's very difficult for her to do so. And I think like you can look at those moments and in some ways underestimate her, because when she's on script, she's not good, but she's not terrible. She's certainly much better than Joe Biden. And I think that's where a lot of the excitement comes from the Democrats, who are like, oh my gosh, we had this horrible corpse, and now we have someone who can at least speak. And it is an upgrade. If you kind of think there's if you'll excuse us, I think it is. My take on her is that, if you excuse a sports analogy here, there's a certain type of like NBA player that if you have them in an offense that's very scripted and you run them off a couple of screens and you get them a wide open 3-point shot, they can make the shot. If that same player tries to take you off the dribble, they're going to turn the ball over. And this is who she is. If she's in a scripted environment, like, for example, even the debate when she had the scripted line ready to call Joe Biden a racist, that actually worked for her. She actually, after that debate, went into first place in the betting markets as to win the nomination. She had multiple little boomlets during that campaign. Eventually, with any critique, she winds up falling. And I think it is the media is not going to do this for them. It's the Trump campaign's job right now to move her off of those spots, get her uncomfortable, move her to a place where she's not wide open for that 3-point shot. They're trying really hard, and they have to figure out a way to do this. I mean, every rope line she goes into should have a Joe the Plumber in it. Somebody who's going to ask her a question that might just get her a little bit off kilter, because when she's comfortable and on script, she's bad, but not horrific. When she is in the moments like the one you just discussed, when she doesn't know what's coming, she turns into a bumbling fool in an instant. This was the most
basic question. This isn't like somebody's asking her about the nuclear triad. This is DEI. What are your thoughts?
I would love for her. Love for her to explain the nuclear triad in 5 minutes.
Wait,
that would be amazing.
I go back to you, Stephen L. Miller. We need to hear it again, don't we? Let's hear it again.
Please.
No,
I think it's really important that we as Americans always embrace our history. The parts that we're proud of and the parts that we're not proud of, but that we can't forget. And we should all agree that we should teach history. We should learn history if we're to ever have an accurate idea of where we want to go and where we don't want to go in the future.
Oh my God.
And
always both sides.
That means also acknowledging the importance of diversity. It means acknowledging the importance of the fact that everyone should have equal opportunity to compete and equity. And then, of course, inclusion. That, hey, let's look around the room and see who's not here. And did we leave the door open?
I'm dead inside. Like, this person could win, Stephen. What if she becomes the president?
Probably is going to.
Oh my God, that can't, truly, how can that happen? How could that be our representative in the world?
Well, here's the thing. What Stu said is the reason why she's so good on script is because she's a prosecutor. Prosecutors, their whole job is to give statements. So if they're not cross-examining witnesses, they give a pre-scripted opening statement, and they give a pre-scripted closing statement, and they do everything. They practice the cadence, they practice the pauses, they practice the lines. And that's why she's not so good, but that's why she's better on a teleprompter and better on a script. And the problem with that is she's going to go into a debate with a guy who he will come out of left field with any answer. I loved what Shane Gillis said about Trump is he's never answered a single question during a debate, and he's never lost a debate. And that's kind of where I don't know how you can prepare for somebody like Trump. And that's why they want the mic. That's why they're trying to change all the rules now, because Kamala, giving an answer like that for 90 seconds during probably what's going to be one of the most watched debates ever is going to get a lot of people to just go, yeah, we're not doing this. This is not Barack Obama.
She won't answer. When I went back and watched that VP Pence Kamala Harris debate, she gave the answer she wanted to give. It was very clear. She had a bunch of canned answers she had rehearsed, and she was disciplined. She did a good job of not veering off script. And she's not going to be baited by Trump, who's going to be trying to poke holes in her arguments and punch at her rhetorically to get her to say something off script. She's not going to fall for it. She's going to be like, I have got my canned answer on immigration. I have got my canned answer on taxes. I don't think she's going to fall for it.
I would maybe disagree with that. When she was debating Mike Pence, she was debating someone who was just kind of nice guy Republican who was going to be very mannered, very well mannered. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to get the media to call me a sexist, whatever like that. When she was on a debate with Tulsi Gabbard, when Tulsi Gabbard decapitated her in front of the entire country and ended her campaign, that was one of those moments where, Gabbard said, this was your record as a prosecutor. You can sit over here and do this all you want. And she didn't have a good answer for that. So sure, she might be scripted, but Trump is not someone you can really prepare for. And I think that this attitude of hiding her away Very similar to what they did with Joe Biden. This is very telling, is the people who said that there was nothing wrong with Joe Biden are the same people and the same journalists who are saying she doesn't have to give an interview. They're putting all of their eggs into the basket of a debate, which is what they did with Biden. And remember, that June debate was Biden team's idea. Everything about it was their idea, from cutting the microphones to having the debate before either of these guys were nominated. And we saw what happened. That was the end of Joe Biden's political career. And I'm not sure Kamala fares any better. Obviously, she's not, a walking dementia patient-ish, but to put everything into one basket of this debate and say Trump's scared to debate, he's not going to debate her, and here are the rules. I think she has less margin for error than Biden did, because that's what they're all saying here. They're saying
she's also going to have the moderators on her side. I mean, Stu, when we did the debate that our show co-sponsored with News Nation, one of the ways that we kept things spicy was to assure the Republicans on stage they would be given the chance to jump in on the argument that had been teed up. They start to talk over each other, and then, you just signal like, hold on, Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm coming to you, but let him finish his answer. And now you have order, and then you also have a bunch of the candidates like in on it. And that's what they want. They want the smart ones want in on it and want to mix it up. You guaranteed you will not be seeing that at the ABC News debate. Zero chance. Those two will run cover for her. If Trump gets up in her grill, like, why did you reverse yourself on fracking? Why did you reverse yourself on the border? Why did you reverse yourself on private health insurance? They are not going to look at her and say, Vice President Harris, please respond on those 3 points. You've got 60 seconds. They're going to want their pre-scripted questions read that have been pre-approved by the ABC News bosses that are not too hard for her. And the last thing they want is debate. And there are many reasons for that. Number one, the anchors want to just read their pre-scripted questions. Number two, they want to protect her. And number three, these anchors are not schooled in live television in that manner, like a cable news host would be. And so they're afraid of things starting to spin to the point where they can't control it. It's not going to be satisfying. I'll be shocked if the debate is satisfying to those of us who really want to see Kamala Harris be pressed and answer questions.
I think that's definitely really possible. I think a lot of the people I talk to who are conservatives are really confident about how he's going to do in a debate with her. And look, he should be able to beat her. He is obviously much more quicker on his feet than she is. I think about this a lot, though, in that we were talking about earlier, trying to find those moments where she's off script. How do you do that? The one we know about kind of is the debate, right? We know that's at least possible. And I feel like the Harris campaign in some ways is doing itself a disservice by taunting Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers what's happened over the past couple of months. Like, Joe Biden taunted Donald Trump. And he said, I'll make my day. Let's do two debates. And it ended his entire political career, right? This happened not in 1984, but like this current year, like 2 months ago to the day. And the fact that they are now out taunting him, I would use that
let me show
opportunity.
that. Let me show the audience what you're talking about. She's actually posting ads calling him a chicken. And just a quick update. This relates to the thing we told you about yesterday, where they're going to have this debate on ABC, we think. And Team Harris went back and tried to change the rules, saying we don't want them standing, we want them to sit. We want openings and closing statements, which was not the previous agreement. And we want her to be able to have notes. I mean, both candidates to be able to have notes. And Team Trump didn't agree to that. And Team Trump said, we don't want any of that. And they also said now, and we also want the mics open when the other candidate is speaking, which was not the agreement before, because Joe Biden didn't want the mics open. So Trump said, okay, fine. He had agreed to all of Biden's stuff. They rolled it into this debate. She came back and tried to change all those rules. And Trump, who was like, his people were like, we don't agree to this shit. She needs to stand. She can't have her notes. We don't want openings. And, the mics, maybe not, seemed to work well for us when we didn't have them open. And now her team is all over him. Like, he's tried to change the rules. And he's somehow too chicken to debate because he's put out there like, should I even effing do this? These people are pains in my ass. ABC hates me. I watched a Sunday panel with Jonathan Karl and Donna Brazile, who's already cheated in a presidential debate to help the Democrat and is now an ABC News contributor. Why am I doing this? right? Like, why don't we just do it on Fox like I proposed? And this is what Kamala's team released, SOT 3.
Why not debate her?
Well, wait. But because they already know everything. They say, oh, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they'll say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her, everybody knows me. But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another network.
And it ends with, are you scared? You scared at real Donald Trump? So keep going. Finish your point.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity for Trump. If I were him, I would say, you think I'm scared? How about one debate every Thursday until the campaign? You want to do 2 a day? Let's do 2 a day on certain days if you'd like. As much as you want to go out there and talk with me about these issues in front of the American people, I welcome it. I mean, you're right. He's going to have unfair rules. The moderators will be against him. But this has been his life, right? Like, this has been pretty much what he's faced in every general election he's been in. And he is pretty prepared for it. He can handle it and wrestle the attention away pretty much better than anyone else. As Stephen was saying, like, he's able to put people off of their normal footing, probably better than any candidate in history. You never know what's coming. More time with Kamala Harris in front of the American people, speaking off the cuff, is what wins this campaign for them. I do fear if things like that don't happen, she's going to win. Right? Like, if she's able to go through the next 10 weeks with no questions asked, no policies revealed, no interviews given, no press conferences given, how could she lose? I wonder how any Democrat could ever lose an election in a situation like this, where when she changes policies,
reporting on her quiet endorsement of policies like Joe Biden's tax policy, which will raise, this is in the Wall Street Journal today, which will raise the top tax rate for individuals from 39% to 44.6%. How you like that? You do well in the American economy. You're a job creator, and you're about to have a 5+% tax increase at the federal level. Never mind what they're doing to you at the state level. Guess what that's going to do? People will be fired. The heads of the corporations who get taxed this way will fire people. They're not going to not be able to pay their bills because of Kamala Harris's tax policy. They're going to get fired. And then people in the working and middle class are not going to be able to pay their bills. That's how the economy works, Kamala. We've got to talk about the report in Politico, Stephen, because they're speaking of being chicken. As I mentioned in the intro, she's now having full staff meetings about to whom she should grant an interview. Reading you some of the reporting. Her promise was to have an interview scheduled by the end of this month. Not actually to do one, but to have one scheduled. Well, that gives her 4 days till Saturday. Her campaign staff has been asking reporters who they think she should talk to. Behind the scenes, TV producers and big name anchors have been calling the campaign to pitch their talent as the person she must do it with. She's had a light schedule since accepting the nomination, Thursday in Chicago. And several sources said she's been using the time not just to prepare for her debate, but to map out a media strategy for the next few weeks. So she's spending her days mapping out her media strategy. Who should you send your pitch to? Politico posits. One source of intrigue concerns who in Harris' world will actually make the decision on who she's going to sit with. Brian Fallon, the campaign's senior advisor for communications, is generally considered the key person. But the interview must be also coordinated with Harris's official office, where the communications director is Kristen Allen. We hear there are some tensions. Another source with knowledge of the process says that Stephanie Cutter, senior advisor for message and strategy, will have an outsized role as well. Campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon, senior advisor David Plouffe represent yet another camp. And Maya Harris, her sister, along with Tony West, the sister's husband, will weigh in with their own views. Really? The political operatives on this list all have long-term relationships with TV networks and their major talent. Harris herself has expressed disagreement with that view, we're told by two people, telling some Democrats she doesn't need a big, showy interview. In October, she did one with 60 Minutes and talked foreign policy. Some of the exchanges were testy, and some Harris aides came away unhappy with the experience. And here's the capper. Here is the capper. What about Tim? Asks Politico. One of the issues that Harris world is currently working to address is how to deploy running mate Tim Walz in the media. The danger in sending him out to do big solo interviews is that he might not have a full command of where Harris is on every issue. Duh. Same, Tim. Same. As someone pointed out last night, Harris talks about the opportunity economy. But if Walz were asked to define it, would he know how? Even he doesn't know her policies. She's having full strategy meetings with outside media about what she should do. She can't function as vice president. All she can do is plan her media strategy. But Trump is the one who's chicken about this debate.
If you go back to her 2020 campaign, the thing you have to understand, Kamala Harris, she's a California Hollywood diva. She demanded that when she was attorney general, that her staff called her general and stood up to greet her in the morning. That was a famous one. If you go back to her 2020 campaign, and then also New York Times and Politico had stories about the dysfunction in her office. She had a 92% staff turnover rate in 3 years.
Megyn
Now,
Markle.
I know Trump isn't. Yeah, no, that's a very good analogy of her. And so now you're seeing there was huge reports about why her campaign fell apart in 2020, and her sister had a lot to do with that as well. You had what basically turned into a viper's pit, where you had everyone trying to get access to her, and everyone's trying to chime in, and everyone's trying to pull her in one or two directions. And when that happens, you ultimately don't take a stance on anything. And that's why her campaign collapsed. This was a huge story. I think it was in Politico even back then. It just went down the line about all of the missteps about her campaign, and she's doing it again. And so what you have now, and this is for people who know that inside baseball, you kind of sit back and watch this unfold. And now what you have are Obama's people and David Plouffe and Steph Cutter trying to make decisions. Then you have people in her office, Kristen Allen and her sister, trying to make decisions. You also have Biden's people in that room trying to make decisions in his advisors. And Jen O'Malley Dillon, who was Biden's campaign manager. So you have three different groups of people all trying to figure out how to make this thing work. And so you're going to have Obama's people telling her, "Your hope, Obama, hope and change." And then you're going to have Biden's people saying, "Well, you can't go too far away from Biden. You can't throw him away because you owe him. And also, if you run farther away from him, people are going to just say, does that mean the last 3 years weren't a success?" And then you have her sister in her ear being like, "Don't listen to any of these people. Just do it on TikTok." And this is going to lead to an explosion of egos. And we see this with Trump also. Trump's kind of, a megalomaniac billionaire. And so you're going to be dealing with all of these problems. And so she's still, at the end of the day, I like to say this, she is still at the end of the day Kamala Harris. With the lights and the shows and the puff pieces and the convention and everything like that, she's still Kamala Harris, and you don't change who that is. And
she's still Kamala Harris with all of her
this
history of what she's done and what she hasn't done and what she still might do. That's Kamala Harris. I will say this, just at point of comparison. When I saw Trump a year ago, it was July of 23, at a Charlie Kirk Turning Point event, I saw him. We had a private hello. That's it. Just like, "Hey, how are you? It's been a long time. How are you? Good." I said, "I'd love to sit with you for an interview." He said, "Okay, we'll do it." And then he did it. That was it. There wasn't a team of managers. His campaign staff was nearby. They weren't like, "Oh God, damn Trump."
JD Vance has done 7 interviews in 2 weekends.
Mm-hmm.
He made the call. Yeah. He's the boss of his own campaign. He doesn't need 40 handlers, Stu, to tell him what his next move should be, either in the Oval Office or while trying to get there.
That's true. Although I will say you guys are ignoring the interview she did with Tim Walz, in which they discussed what seasonings white people eat. That did occur, and I just don't want to brush that under the.
And then they found a recipe where he said he doesn't season his food, and they found a recipe that he wrote where it's all seasoning. I
know. Yeah. He couldn't even tell the truth on that, which is incredible. Yeah. I mean, they literally found the sequel to George Santos to nominate as their vice president. Like every part of this guy's life is false. But you're right. Like Donald Trump doesn't, he doesn't care. And JD Vance, I think, has been really impressive on this. He goes wherever.
He says yes
He'll
to
go
everyone.
Wherever. Yeah, he'll talk to anyone, and he takes them on, and he wins these arguments. And he's winning arguments not against journalists, but people advocating for the PR room of the White House. And he continually does this, and Trump does it quite a bit as well. It should be more common and honestly completely required, that type of attitude, to win the presidency of the United States. Should it not? You should be able to be willing to go out there and do that. You can't ask reporters which world leader you're going to meet with when they're threatening to nuke you. You have to be able to be quick on your feet. And Kamala Harris has shown the exact opposite trait for her entire career. The media is going to do everything they can to hide her until November. And so far, they've been able to do it. If it works this well, though, if this can actually happen in our country, we deserve every little bit of this that we get.
Okay, speaking of Tim Walz being the George Santos of presidential candidates,
He's not that cool.
There was a report just the other day that Tim Walz, back in the day, like I think it was 2006, my team's sending it to me, it was in our text chain, here it is, was caught lying. Hold on, let me get it. He was caught lying about receiving a Chamber of Commerce award. I don't know if you guys saw this.
Yeah.
This is by the Free Beacon, Eliana Johnson, our pal. When Tim Walz launched his 2006 campaign for Congress, he boasted in his public biography that in 1993, he was, quote, named the outstanding young Nebraskan, that's where he grew up, by the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for his service in the education, military, and small business communities, quote. That was not true. Walz's 2006 boast about being named outstanding young Nebraskan can still be found in an archived version of his campaign website. That November, the president of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce, Barry Kennedy, wrote Walz to object, quote, it has come to my attention that as part of your campaign for U.S. Congress, you have posted your biography on your website that claims you received an award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for your service to the business community. We researched this matter and can confirm you have not been the recipient for any award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. Kennedy asked that Walz remove the reference from his website and noted that the chamber had endorsed his opponent, Gil Gutnecht, the Republican incumbent who had held the seat since 1995. And by the way, the guy who wrote him the letter said, I've been in this post for many, many years, and I actually have been with the Chamber of Commerce for the past 20 years. So had you been awarded any such thing, I would know. It's another lie, Stu. He can't stop himself.
He really can't. And again, it's the head of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce that's doing the reporting on this. It's no actual reporter doing the reporting. Yeah. He's got to do the homework on that.
Well, finally, the Free Beacon found it. God bless them.
Yeah, God bless them for doing it. And they've done a bunch of good stuff here throughout this campaign. Yeah, I mean, it's odd. I think there's a difference too. Like if you think about, like if you're embezzling funds from your company and someone says, hey, are you embezzling funds? You say no. It's a bad lie. You shouldn't certainly be embezzling funds, but people would understand that lie. If your wife asks you, do I look fat in this? And you say no, and you're lying, like it's an understandable lie, even though it might not be the right thing to do. I feel like the people who are the most dangerous are the people who lie about things that don't matter at all. At no point in any election, at any point in any job search, would anyone be like, wait a minute, I was considering the other candidate, but this guy won that award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. It is a weird flex, to say the least, Megyn. And when you're lying about stuff like that, you have a problem.
It's the person who you say, hey, Stephen, what'd you have for lunch today? And you say, oh, I had a roast beef sandwich and you had turkey. Why did you say that? Why would you make up that lie? There's something, I don't know the psychology behind a pathological liar, but I know one when I see one. And Tim Walz, I see you.
He's the type of person that lying is his first. Yeah, his lying is his first language. It's like he was raised in another country and learned that language first, and is uncomfortable telling the truth. Everything we've found out about this guy has been false, and you wonder why they would pick somebody like this. And I think a lot of it goes back to their overall election strategy, which is pretend you are a moderate, pretend you're folksy, pretend you're middle of the country, pretend you're moderate, you're from Pennsylvania, you're lunchbox Joe Biden, Kamala Harris is doing it now. All these reversals are things moving toward the more popular position. You pretend you're that, and then when you get into power, you rule like Tim Walz ruled. You ruled like Joe Biden ruled. You ruled like Kamala Harris will rule. Extreme and doing all sorts of things that are outside of what you're actually able to do with the power you were given. It is a frightening profile for someone with that much power.
All right, stand by, because we got much more to go through with Stu and Steve. The news cycle continues to give, but we're going to take a quick break first. And I do want to tell you, we have finally figured out who Tim Walz reminds us of. It's not one of the like sitcom stars that you've seen, but I know exactly who it is, and I'm going to show you right after this break. If you're tired of those same old coffee, let me try it again. If you're tired of the same old coffee from those mega corporations pushing their woke agendas, listen up. It's time to take a stand and support a brand that truly embodies American values, Blackout Coffee. They stand with hardworking Americans who believe in family, faith, and freedom. They roast some of the most incredible coffee you will ever taste, using only premium grade beans, roasted and shipped to you within 48 hours. And for the cold brew fans, Blackout Coffee is excited to announce the launch of their 2 new ready-to-drink cold brew coffee latte options. Don't settle for less. Make the switch to Blackout Coffee. Head on over to blackoutcoffee.com/MK or just use the code MK when you're checking out to get yourself 20% off your first order. That's blackoutcoffee.com/MK. The code is MK. Join the movement. Taste the difference. Remember, with every sip, you're supporting a brand that stands for America. Be awake, not woke.
President Trump, would you want the microphone muted in the debate whenever you're not speaking?
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted. I didn't like it the last time, but it worked out fine. I mean, ask Biden how it worked out. It was fine. And I think it should be the same. We agreed to the same rules. Same rules and same specifications. And I think that's probably what it should be. But they're trying to change it. The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate. She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
I think her position is the same as Donald Trump's position on this, because he went on to say in that same interaction that he doesn't care. It doesn't matter to him whether or not the mics are hot, and frankly, that he would prefer if they were hot. So I think this issue is resolved unless Donald Trump allows his handlers to overrule him. We'll have a fulsome debate between the two candidates with live microphones where both candidates will be able to lay out their vision for where they want to take this country.
Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. Here with me today, Stu Burguiere, host of Stu Does America, and Stephen L. Miller, host of the Versus Media podcast. So there you have it. I guess it's set. I don't know if it's set because there was more after the back and forth. Trump suggesting, why should I do it? In that clip I mentioned from yesterday where he's like, everyone there is biased against me. We have it. Here it is, up too.
Well, I watched this weekend, and it's the worst of all networks. George Slopadopoulos and all of the different people. And the worst. And they had this Jonathan Karl, who's a lightweight. And he was asking questions of Tom Cotton, who was fantastic, by the way. And I watched that group talk to Biden about vanilla ice cream. And then I watched the way they went after Tom Cotton. And Tom Cotton handled it like easy. But when you see the level of hatred in that room, and when you see Jonathan Karl, who's terrible, I mean, he's just terrible. He's just an average person. But they tell him what to do. And then when you look at the roundtable they had, which was Donna Brazile, wasn't she the one that gave Hillary Clinton the questions when she was at CNN? But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another network. I want to do it. I won because of debates. Ask Biden.
So it's on? I don't know. Stephen, is it on? Is it on September 10th, ABC?
I think it'll happen. I said yesterday, and I love how Trump, he kind of hits a point. He's like, ask Biden how this worked. And that to me should be his whole answer. I think, and I said this yesterday on Twitter, that if Kamala, if ABC capitulates to Kamala Harris campaign's demands, which I saw a report that they wanted to be seated with notes. I didn't see if that was confirmed or not. But if they capitulate to her and say, okay, we're going to change the rules
Team
again.
Trump, just to be clear, Team Trump says that's what she's demanding, that's one of the changes, two of the changes.
Well, they probably
have
the background. Yeah, she has, I haven't seen her deny that, so that's probably true. If ABC capitulates and goes back on it, if I'm Trump, I don't do the debate. I just simply say, we're not going to do this, because here you have candidate Calvin Ball, who, remember, when Biden dropped out of the debate and then Trump said, well, that's it, we're not having the debate. And then Kamala jumps in and goes, you owe me a debate because, you agreed to do this. Everyone was just kind of like, that was with Biden, who is no longer alive. Okay. And so my answer to her would have been, if that's the rules, if these sacrosanct, rules of debate, these are set in stone, no matter what, then Kamala Harris technically still owes 3 debates with J.D. Vance. And that's what I would have countered with. And again, she gets away with this because the media lets her get away with it. And this interesting thing with Jon Karl, this is the second time in 3 weeks that he is put out a falsehood and said Kamala Harris didn't say this. She never believed this on abolishing health care and being for Medicare for all, when she literally co-sponsored a bill in Congress for it. And my belief is that we've had reports where she's talking on background. She's talking off the record with reporters, both on her airplane and behind the scenes. And my theory is that she said this stuff to Jon Karl off the record and others, and George Stephanopoulos and others, and they're basically just relaying that position to people like Tom Cotton. They can't admit that because they can't admit that they're holding off the record conversations. So when Jon Karl says, well, she's never believed that, that's, him relaying a message through Harris. And that's the only explanation I can come up with, again, for being that naive on something, where you can just go back and check the tape. And Jon Karl's not going to come on. He's not going to apologize and say he got it wrong. And so Trump, it's, he's the one who agreed to this debate on ABC. If they stick to those rules, like Kamala Harris wanted, they said, you're going to debate me on September 10th, which was supposed to be the Biden debate. Well, Biden's not there anymore. And they're saying we can't change any of these rules at all. And now yesterday they're coming out and they have a list of demands. And if ABC says, okay, we're going to do what the Harris campaign wants, if I'm Trump, I back out of the debate and say, we're not going to do this.
He doesn't want to look like he's afraid of her. He's not afraid of her. I mean, I think he really would debate her every Thursday, but it would have to be on neutral territory. That's what he's looking for, neutral. That's very hard for a Republican to find. He did make an interesting revelation, Stu, in his interview with Shawn Ryan, who we love, Navy SEAL, was on the show over Memorial Day. And he revealed, I think for the first time, something interesting about a deal term Joe Biden wanted before that CNN debate, in which he wound up, tanking his own chances at a second term. Take a listen to this clip.
I gave up everything. I said, they gave me a thing. They really didn't want to debate. They gave me CNN. They gave me Dana Bash. They gave me, who's, not exactly my best friend. And they gave me what I used to call fake Tapper, but I don't call them fake anymore because I thought they were very fair. Both of them were very fair during the debate. But they gave me 2 people that I would never take. They gave me a network that I would never take, a cable station, CNN. They said, we'd like you will both sit down. I said, look, let's stand up, okay? I was able, that's the only point I got. And they gave me all of these, they said there's no audience. I'd rather have an audience. But they say there's no audience. And they say, we're going to cut your mic off after your question. So they gave me everything. And they thought I'd reject it. I said, I'll take it. Because it was the only way I could debate him. And they were surprised I took it. But they sort of had to go forward with it. And we went forward. And I wouldn't say he performed brilliantly. This was not Winston Churchill. And he was very white. He wore very white makeup. I don't know what happened to him. I don't think his makeup artist did a great job, actually. I walked in, I said, man, is he white?
What was interesting, though, is that there was a proposal at one point to have the 2 of them sitting down. And he wasn't totally clear. I'm almost sure that came from Team Biden because all those other terms came from Team Biden. But whether it came from Biden or CNN, it's kind of the same difference. Somebody was trying to help Biden out, realizing the likelihood of him not being able to stand for 90 minutes was higher than normal, higher than average, and it was the only thing he pushed back on. And it's amazing, right? After all that now Kamala Harris comes back and says she needs to sit too. And she needs to have her little notepad with her, sent out there with her cheat sheet, because the test is always easier to take, Stu, when it's open book.
Yeah, or where someone like Donna Brazile is leaking you the questions in advance. It gets very easy as well.
Can we just spend a minute on that? How is this woman employed by a news network still? How does Donna Brazile have a job with a network? She cheated on a presidential debate. She took the questions from CNN and she gave them to Hillary Clinton and her team. And she got hired by Fox after that. And now she's hired by ABC. And now ABC has the next presidential debate.
It's incomprehensible that happened. And, it's funny to look back at the history of this, where you have a situation with the debate where, you go back to the 2020. I mean, Biden was elected basically with this idea of return to normalcy. Now, that was a nonsensical idea from the beginning, but that's basically his pitch to people. Like, Trump, it's been intense. It's been chaotic. All this crazy stuff has happened. I'll bring it back to normal. Don't worry about it. And of course, when you look at the debate situation, the norms were set for many, many years. The Presidential Debate Commission put these things together. There was usually 3 of them. Sometimes there was 2. Usually there was 3 of them. And Biden is the one that overturned all of that. Biden is the one who brought it out of that system. Biden is the one that decided to do the debates the way that they were. These 2, kind of one in June. I mean, it's totally out of the normal schedule. Obviously, that blew up in his face. I think Trump is right that they didn't expect him to agree to the terms because they made the terms so difficult for Trump. But I think Trump's response was correct in that moment, where he said, you know what? Screw it. I'll do it. I'm in. Whatever you want. I'm there. We will talk about it. I think his response should be kind of the same. I think, you guys are right. He's totally morally justified to just say, no, you're changing the rules. This is ridiculous. It's an unfair. That's all fair. But I think it actually benefits him for these things to happen. I think he should accept them and give as open an invitation as he can possibly muster to her to make more of these things happen. Because the more time she's in front of the American people, the better the results.
Not to mention, adversarial media works well for Trump. That's all he ever faces, so he's very used to it, and he's fine in those settings. We've got to get to Tim Walz. We figured out, finally, who he reminds us of. It's a compilation, but I think we've nailed it. Watch.
Governor Tim. Come on down, not fall on down.
Listening audience, it is a compilation of guests being called down on The Price is Right to that little, where you bid, see if you can get on stage and compare it, contrast.
Governor Tim
I think
Walz.
Somebody said, yeah.
Look at him.
Well, I was born in a small town and I live in a small town.
So weird.
It's the same. And just for fun, just for giggles, speaking of The Price is Right, it also reminded us of another person who kind of became famous on The Price is Right. You know him as a very different kind of person today, but this was when he was still admitting he's a man, Dylan Mulvaney.
Spin the wheel.
Yeah, you get to spin the wheel, but guess what? You get a second chance in this game first.
No way. Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm still in it.
Yes. You got it. Dylan's a
This
winner.
is Tim Walz.
Dylan's a winner. Dylan, nice job, man.
I'm sorry, but we knew it was familiar, and there it is, black and white, right in front of you, Stu.
It's the same dance. He's got the same dance as well. It really is amazing. I will say it is a little unfair to Price is Right contestants who largely told the truth. So they are definitely different in that way.
They admitted when they were guessing.
Yes, it's true. He's a strange dude. I don't get it. feel like this is going to get grating to the American public eventually. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Like, I am very annoyed by Kamala Harris. He actually annoys me more than Kamala Harris annoys me, which is saying something.
How about all the bowing, Steve? You know, it's like he spent all the 30 trips to China. He said they never treated him so well. And now he like bows like he's Chinese all the time. You know, I have news for you, Governor. We don't do that in our country. Bowing over to people. That's not our thing. I think, look at him with the hands together. Mm. What are you doing? It's not a yoga class, and you're not in China. You're running to be the vice president of the United States. And newsflash, if you bow to a foreign leader like that, you're going to get crushed, even by the leftist media back here at home. Well, maybe not.
I saw someone say that if Chris Farley was still alive, this would be the role of a lifetime back on SNL. And there's that famous entrance from Chris Farley on David Letterman when late night used to be funny. And that's, I mean, my family's from Wisconsin, so I have a pretty good idea about like what Midwest folksy actually is. And I ever since I never heard this guy talk before. So when you look at him, it's kind of like, oh, okay, he's, like the drunken uncle on Thanksgiving or whatever. And then when he opens his mouth, he's so rough. Like he's just in your face, confrontational, no matter what he says is just kind of, the barfly at the local tavern. And I was actually really shocked by him because like, I don't get folksy from him. I don't get that tone at all. And so this is another guy that I'm really interested to see debate, especially how they've tried to like classify J.D. Vance as just some dude from Yale. And he's trying to like he's trying to outpour J.D. Vance, who has a hit bestseller and a Hollywood film based on how poor he was as a kid growing up. And so I'm really curious because Tim Walz is another guy. He hasn't had to answer for a single thing. He hasn't had to answer for embellishing his military service. He hasn't had to answer for his draconian COVID restrictions after saying we just mind our own damn business. He hasn't had to answer for any of the embellishments on any part of his bio yet. He's another one. People say about Kamala, this guy is not given an interview, and like Politico said, because they're scared that he's going to say something that's going to go against what Kamala wants. And so I'm really curious to see this guy and J.D. Vance sit down, because I think J.D. is going to probably go after a lot of this stuff about saying he was deployed to Afghanistan and saying, well, I was actually in Italy. And that's kind of his whole bio. And like Stu said, if you're lying about things from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce, there's things like that he should answer for and say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I mean, this is what's going to be really
honestly, that would be such a great
Waltz,
question.
Because
why'd you do that?
Yeah, like why?
The Nebraska Chamber of Commerce says this is a lie. Why would you lie about this? That's the landing on that issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think his military service is more important, but that's just compiles onto it. And it's like, if you're going to lie about your military services, then you're going to lie about anything. And so again, Waltz has never had to answer that. And I've never seen like Waltz even in a debate. And so that's going to be another thing that's going to be really interesting to watch between those two.
The media, of course, has been disgusting. No one's surprised, but it is kind of fun when it gets called out. And last week, there was a viral clip of Caitlin Collins, who CNN is trying to make into a star. I'm sorry, but she's only a star with leftists. And the fact that she has some roots in Alabama does not make her a fair and balanced reporter. I will submit to the record, her biggest sin is not that she is biased, though she is. It's that she's boring. She's extremely boring with no personality. I have a pro tip for her. Smile. Try smiling every once in a while. Try not to be like in your delivery such a cold-hearted bitch all the time, because it gives people nothing to bond to. You can be a tough interviewer and also have some warmth, unless there is none inside of you, in which case it's more difficult. I don't know her, so I don't know what the truth is. But here she is with Bill Maher, and they got into the subject of presidential politics. Watch.
What do you think about the fact that Kamala doesn't talk to the press? In a way, I feel like it's more insulting than what Trump does. Now, Trump says you're the enemy of the people, which is pretty bad. But she's kind of saying I don't need you.
I don't know if it's worse than denigrating the press on a daily basis, which is what Donald Trump did. And so I don't know if I would compare the two. I do think she should talk to the press. I think anyone who wants to have access to the nuclear codes should be willing to sit down and take questions. And we want to have her on the show. I don't think that you can say that CNN is anything but fair. I mean, look at that. We covered President Biden's exit from the race very closely, the pressure on him to get out. And I feel like I can speak with authority on this. I'm from Alabama. I'm from a very red state. I have a very conservative family, a lot of them who are Trump voters. They watch my show every night. And I think they know that they can trust me, that, we call bullshit on every side, not just whatever leaning our audience may be.
So it's really just what's happening here is that Donald Trump is evil. That's what you really need to know. And she was actually on there suggesting that CNN is fair in its coverage and that, you can trust CNN. You heard her making that claim earlier, and she doubled down on it just with him. I'll give you an example of their super fair coverage. Watch.
It was not a rigged election. It was not a stolen election. You and your supporters lost more than 60 court cases on the election.
It's the kind of thing that is playing out all over conservative media. I just want to do a little bit of record correcting. There's not record crime right now. Number one, Harris was put in charge, as you said earlier, of combating the roots of immigration. She was not and is not the borders are.
We should note that Claudine Gay has not been accused of stealing anyone's ideas in any of her writings. She's been accused of sort of more like copying other people's writings without attribution. So
that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
What you're seeing behind me is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin over the course of the night.
Because we have, as you introduced him, as a combat correspondent, which was what his title was. But when you dig a little deeper into that, he was a public affairs specialist, someone who did not see combat, which certainly the title combat correspondent kind of gives you a different impression. So he may be the imperfect messenger on that.
But CNN is nothing but fair. Quote, nothing but fair, guys. Is that your impression, Stephen?
She does a sleight of hand here, which is she says, Mar went on to say he made fun of the Colbert clip where they just out started laughing when, she said CNN is fair. Colbert kind of said it sarcastically. And the sleight of hand she pulled is, we speak to lawmakers from both sides. So we give people equal opportunity. But like you said, she doesn't go into, and of course, Mar doesn't have the clips about how she treats people from both sides differently, how she's combative with, Ted Cruz, or she'll cut off an interview if somebody says something about COVID or something like that. She's cut off Republicans. And she's never cut off a Democrat. And that's the sleight of hand here that she says is, well, we're fair in that we give coverage to both sides. And they're clearly not fair in how they treat both sides. And that's kind of the game she's playing there. And, one of the things about Caitlin Collins is her greatest sin is actually coming out of conservative media. And Mar even kind of called her on that. And she sort of just said, hey, I did what I had to do. And that's kind of what the conservative media movement has suffered from people like her, from people like Oliver Darcy, who, they prey off people's, most impassioned vulnerabilities about what they believe in politics. It could be abortion. It could be the Second Amendment. It could be, whatever conservative values are. They prey on that and they get people revved up, and then they take a big bag of money and say, oh, just kidding. Sorry. And that's where people like me, we get real jaded about who these people are. And so, again, that's CNN's sleight of hand is we do give equal time, but how they treat both sides is completely different. And she neglects that point.
I'm going to steal a moment here, Stu, because this is why people can't freaking stand the media. The stories we've been discussing, Jonathan Karl's disgusting bias, the media working with Kamala's team, like, gee, consider this one, consider that one. The fact that this Kamala Harris team would feel comfortable consulting with the media on who they should give this interview with, right? Caitlin Collins trying to say CNN has been nothing but fair after we've all watched them. Literally, the debate moderators had called Trump Hitler. So that's fair. That's their version of fair. And that is why alternative media, like the two of you guys and this show, have done so well. Because people are sick of this shit. They can't stand being force-fed this nonsense by these mainstream media outlets. And so just a point of pride for the MK show and our audience. It hit the news yesterday that our show has officially crossed over the 1 billion views mark on YouTube, which is one of our 3 platforms. We air live on SiriusXM Triumph channel. Monday through Friday at noon East. And we have a podcast, as you know, if you're listening. And we also have a YouTube version of the show. It's all the same show. It's just different platforms. And in July, which was a very busy news month, we hit record numbers. But it was a very busy news month for everyone, not just for the MK show. But I'll tell you something. Our show, which has 6 producers, all right, we have a total of 6 producers on this show, beat NBC News's YouTube channel by millions, tens of millions, beat CBS News's YouTube channel by tens of millions. I'll give you the numbers. We hit 116.8 million views in July. The NBC News YouTube channel, 78 million. The CBS News, 83 million. Sky News, 87 million. BBC News, 72. Again, we're close to doubling some of these. CNBC, 17 million. CNBC, 17 million. We had almost 100 million more views than they had. Do you have any idea how many staffers they have at CNBC and NBC and CBS, and how much money goes into, yes, their YouTube feed, but all the content that goes on there is from their big broadcast networks. All the producers, all the shows, and they appear on these YouTube feeds. All the content, all the viral clips. We have one show. We have this show and 6 producers, and we're crushing these people. And why is that? It's because the audience is onto the bullshit that is the mainstream press, so-called mainstream, the corporate press, dying media. That's what it is. Even CNN, which has a very large and successful YouTube feed. And by the way, their subscribers dwarf our subscribers. They've got NBC has, I think, 16 million. We have 2.3 million, and we're crushing them. Why? Because those numbers are fake. People will click, okay, I follow, when they see one clip they like. They never go back. They have no loyalty to them. Our audience is loyal. They love the show, and they trust us, and we earn their trust and work to every day. CNN, their YouTube, they had 190 million in July, which is huge. They had a presidential debate a week before July. They are supported by $1 billion news operation. So they have 190. We have 2/3 of their audience with 6 staffers. 6. That's what's happening right now in media. And it's enormous. That's the sea change that is underway will not and cannot be undone. And people like the CNN anchor we just showed and the ABC News anchor we just showed have no relevance. They cannot change the national debate. They aren't changing the national debate. They are the subjects of scorn and derision because we're on to their unfairness and their bias. And Stu, when we first looked at these numbers, we celebrated internally as a team. And what we saw in the numbers was not a victory for us in our particular show, though that's nice. It's a victory for you guys and for us and for Ben Shapiro and for all of our buddies who are in this lane with independent voices trying to tell the audience what's real as opposed to the bullshit that we're being force-fed by so-called mainstreamers.
Absolutely. You said it perfectly. And it's about authenticity. I mean, I think people know when they come to this show that when Kamala Harris says something stupid, you're going to call her out on it. But also when Donald Trump says something stupid, you're going to call him out on it, right? People want that authenticity. Yeah. They want to know. They don't necessarily need you to be right about everything. Nobody's right about everything. But they want to believe that you actually believe what you're saying. And that is incredibly rare when you look at mainstream media these days. I mean, you look at how inconsistent it is. The Caitlin Collins thing is a great example of it, in which, look at the whimsical sort of shoulder shrug she gave the fact that a presidential candidate is ignoring all media. It's like, oh, well, we'd love to have her on our show. It'd be great. That's not the way you would treat that if a Republican were doing the same thing. I think everybody knows that. And the clip you played, which I was watching live after the assassination attempt, where CNN came on the air and said it was the guy who almost got killed on stage's fault. It was his rhetoric of saying fight, 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 of standing up while he's bleeding, being hugged by Secret Service, and having this incredible moment to tell his followers to keep fighting and fighting and fighting. That was a rhetoric problem. A couple of weeks later, the Democratic National Convention went on. What was their slogan at that convention? When we fight, we win. At no point was I told that that rhetoric might get us into trouble. At no point did anyone bring up anything like that. It's just the inconsistency in the lack of authenticity. Honestly, in some small way, thank God for it, because I'm sure I wouldn't have a job. Megyn, I'm sure you would. I wouldn't have a job if they weren't failing so poorly and leaving this gigantic gap for all of us to run through, because people are dying for the truth.
There are people on that list who would love to have seen me without a job forever. And so I would be lying if I told you something other than I am thrilled that we, our one show, crushed NBC News on its YouTube feed this month. Crushed them. I think there are plenty of people there who would love to have seen yours truly exit the news business altogether, and frankly, who did their level best to make sure I never had a microphone in front of me again. So to all those people, I will say as graciously and with class as I can, fuck off. I'm back. You can't shut me up. Hi, go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just do tomorrow's show with a Santa hat and a beard, and you'll be great. You'll be golden. To kind of capitalize, I mean, you said like why you're beating these networks, and I've said this for a while. It's because there are no conservative points of views on any of these networks. I think Scott Jennings is the only one out of those four networks, and he's on CNN. And it used to be Mary Catherine Ham. Yeah, it used to be Mary Catherine Ham, and then she spoke up about Jeffrey Toobin, and we can't have that. And so he's back on CNN. Amazing. And so what you have NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, MSNBC. They're all fighting over the same share of the audience. You have 7 networks who are all fighting over, 40% of the pie. And then you have, and that even goes for late night shows, which aren't even, it's late night group therapy for libs now. And then you have Gutfeld, who's beating them because they're all fighting over the same audience. And so I've said if CNN, if they really wanted to be smart and take on networks and Fox, they'd give Ben Shapiro an hour-long primetime show or someone like that, just an example. But they won't do that because they become ideologically bent. There's not a pro-Trump voice on any of these networks. And regardless if you agree with him or not, he does speak for one of the major political parties. And, to guys like from the Dispatch, and I know David French personally, and guys like Jonah Goldberg, you're not getting back through that door, okay? We're not going back 35 years to Reaganism. Whether you agree with that or not is not the point. It's just a simple fact. And so when you don't have any voices on any of these networks, there are no pro-life voices. There are no Second Amendment voices. I know Stephen Gutowski is now on CNN, and he's there to kind of explain gun rights and this whole thing. But you literally have 50 to 55% of the country who is completely unrepresented in this media. And here, like Stu said, you have Caitlin Collins, who's just like, we'd like her to come on, but whatever. And there's this whole narrative out there. John Harwood is saying, hey, we'd like to talk to her, but she's trying to win the election. And then you have people like Sam Stein at the Bulwark being like, she doesn't have to come talk to us. And my attitude is then, what do we need you for? And this is why journalism was a suicide. It wasn't a murder. People like me didn't kill journalists in journalism. You got it. This was a suicide because these people decided we're going to go off our meds and we're going to stop doing our jobs because it's more important that we get somebody like Kamala Harris elected and then we can all bear witness to the greatness of another historical political figure, as opposed to telling the truth. And no journalist wants to be the one in their social circle and in their professional circle to be the one who wrote the story that helps Donald Trump. Ezra Klein made this very clear. And I've said that this whole election is a do-over of 2016 for the media. It's a chance to go back and right the wrongs that they thought that they did with Hillary Clinton. And so no stories about emails, no stories about anything, nothing that can perceive to help Donald Trump. Because if you write that story, regardless of the truth and regardless of where it goes, and you write the story that becomes a colossal scandal that tanks Kamala Harris's election, you're out. You don't get a CNN job. You don't get invited to book parties. You don't get a book deal. You don't get on network, and you don't get promoted. And that should actually be the life of a journalist. You should want to live that very lonely existence to where the pursuit of truth only matters. They don't do that. It's about the celebrity. It's about access. And basically our media is Hollywood for ugly people. And so people like that, where Caitlin Collins is just like, hey, I'd love it if she came on. Tee-hee. You can do more than that. where you can just end and say, this is day 47 of Kamala Harris not giving an interview. And they think it's about them. Kamala Harris sitting down with an interview is not about the interviewer, and it's not about Kamala Harris. It's about us. It's about the voting public. We have a right to know what she thinks, what she says, where she stands on policies, why she's changed her mind, and what she knew about Joe Biden for the last 3 years. This has nothing to do with, we're going to land Gail Roberts or we're going to get Colbert. And you see this kind of jockeying between them, and all I see is a bunch of ego wrestling when this is about her speaking to us, not to George Stephanopoulos, not to Gayle King, and not to Caitlin Collins. It's about her speaking to us and using them as a vessel. And if they don't want to be that vessel, we don't need you anymore. It's that simple.
That's what the audience is saying. I'm going to take a break, but I do want to say I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to SiriusXM, because when the show was 1 year old and audio only, I was still in no man's land, and I wasn't sure, whether the show would be successful or not. It was doing well as a podcast, but SiriusXM took a risk in partnering with me because I still had been smeared and the stench of NBC was on me. And SiriusXM is pro free speech. It doesn't matter if it's coming from the right or from the left. Look at their lineup. They have speakers from both and have for a long, long time. And they said, we'd love to amplify your voice. We would love to partner with you and put your show on the air. And that really helped. And they've been so supportive. And they're the reason I can come down here to the beach and do the show from here in the summers. They make it so much easier for me. They're just a lovely, strong partner to work with. It's a blue chip brand. And while they don't even try to weigh in on editorial on this show, they know I wouldn't allow that. But others would try, maybe you want to soften. No, never once. They're quick to hire people with whom I disagree too, which I think is great. That's the way it should be. It should be amplification of voices across the spectrum so people can make up their own minds. So in any event, we are a top show on SiriusXM. We are one of the top 10 podcasts in the country. And we have now overtaken NBC and CBS on YouTube, which is nice. They still have their channels, which I understand. Those are big too, but so's our podcast, and so's our radio show. So there we go. A point of victory. Thanks to our audience. God bless you all. We're not done. Quick break, and we'll be back with more of the news. You didn't vote for this economic downturn, did you? And the high inflation? But you could be paying for it at the pump, at the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done with Debt created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently, without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt can stand between you and bill collectors, and they negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. The best news is Done with Debt is accepting new clients right now. But you do need to hurry because some of their debt strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done with Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 now. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. You know how much our family loves our dogs, right? Even Strudwick, sweet, troublesome, but adorable Strudwick. We love him. I can't even imagine life without them. They have a great life. They're lucky. But some dogs don't and aren't. That's why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all of the animals with shelter and safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but we love these other animals too. We just can't house and care for them all. But maybe all of us can help them find love and shelter at Delta Rescue. Go to deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. So big news yesterday as Tulsi Gabbard came out and officially and bigly, in a big way, endorsed Donald Trump. He's putting together a team of rivals of sorts, since she's also like RFK Jr. He used to be a Democrat and is now an independent. Watch.
This administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world. and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people.
She's awesome. Stephen, not everybody thinks so, though. I'm going to skip for now the reaction from the left, and I'm going to bring you a bit of Noah Rothman over at National Review. I love National Review, and Noah's a good guy, but he's so off on this. He has a piece over there called "The Blame America First Crowd Migrates to the GOP." First, he says Trump's Democratic opponents don't seem especially upset by RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard endorsing Trump. I beg to differ. Look at the pile-on by the Kennedys themselves against their own brother in the wake of his endorsement. And then he goes on to suggest that the reason Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. were politically homeless well before this is because they got the boot. They didn't leave the Democrats left them, and for good reason. And he says, embracing the paranoia that these 1-2 Democrats court an agitated unease that leads them both to conclude that America and Americans are the problem is not a risk-free proposition for Trump, and goes on from there, suggesting this has somehow risk to the Trump campaign. The theory is basically they're nutcases, and why would he sidle up to them? What do you make of it?
I think it's interesting that right now you have Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, 2 Democrats, basically aligning with Trump. And then the very same day, you had 200 former McCain, Romney, Bush officials come out and endorse Kamala Harris. So I don't know what's going on, if I'm going to be completely honest. And that's the other part of Noah's piece. And I like Noah, same as you, and I respect him. I just think that this is a struggle of trying to reimagine where the old politics are, and they're dead. And whether or not, again, you agree with the direction or not is completely beside the point. That style of conservatism or republicanism isn't coming back. And I would argue that this is a different version of that. This is conservatism on offense. And that's always kind of what Trump has always been. And so when you have the former party of Bush, McCain, Romney, et cetera, all aligning with Kamala Harris, that sends it to me a bigger message than Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. And for all intents and purposes, I do think RFK is kind of a kook. Every story they release about him, though, with animals only makes him cooler. You know, he dumped a bear in Central Park. He's a falconer. He's handled snakes with his bare hands. And now there's the story that he wanted to cut off a dead whale's head with a chainsaw. I mean, that sounds pretty fun, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, it's dead. It's, whatever. You cut off its head, stuff it with dynamite, and stand back. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? And so I think that this is just kind of a new alignment of a conservative populism. And I know that those two ideas are at odds, but that's just where we are. This is largely a failure of institutional politics. And so you have a very jaded GOP and a very jaded GOP base who sees like their old party all aligning with Kamala Harris, which I don't expect conservatives, Republicans to go and vote for Donald Trump. I'm not a Trump voter myself, but don't align yourself and say you're going to support Kamala Harris while still calling yourself a Republican or a conservative. You're not. And it's okay to admit that. Just don't admit what you are under the pretense of saying, well, I'm a conservative, so I can get on CNN and MSNBC and bash my fellow conservatives. And nobody has time or tolerance for that. And so I look at this and I say, if Tulsi Gabbard wants to endorse Trump, let's hear what she has to say. If RFK Jr. wants to endorse Trump, let's sort of hear what he has to say. And those are decisions going to be made. And so I do find it interesting that we heard from people like Jim Acosta, this vaunted Camelot Kennedy legacy, and said he's tarnished this family's legacy. These people lobotomized one of their own family members, and one of their guys killed a woman in a car and drowned her. And so, not to mention that JFK had Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, not to mention that JFK had Marilyn Monroe killed allegedly. And so you have this entire sordid history of the Kennedy family. You don't even have to go that far.
JFK was banging 15, 16-year-old staffers in the White House. I mean, like, okay, this is not.
So this idea of this Kennedy legacy, and we can like drown a woman in the backseat of a car, but if you endorse Donald Trump, how dare you, sir, is laughable to people like me. So again, I'm not a Kennedy guy. I think Gabbard has some interesting positions, and again, if she's going to do this, let's hear what she has to say. There is
the thing about Noah is, Stu, he's very much a neocon. Here. He's a neocon. I mean, and that's fine. That's how he feels, and he's much more aggressive when it comes to U.S. intervention than I think today's Republican Party is. But Tulsi Gabbard would be the opposite of that, right? She definitely doesn't see eye to eye with him on things like Ukraine, and so he attacks her. But I think he's off base here, because I do think that there is a growing strain of voters that's had it with the military aggressiveness of the past 20 years, and that's had it with our elites lying to us about the medical industrial complex. And by the way, I agree that RFKJ is, I'll use the term eccentric, no question, eccentric, and has had some weird skeletons in his closet. But his position on things like vaccines is worth pressing, because I'll tell you, show me who else has done a 4-hour interview with RFKJ, at least half of which was devoted to vaccines. We called his detractors and got them on the record to us saying, what would you like to ask him? Where did he go wrong? What is wrong with this statement in his book? Give us the ammo. And then we let him have it both barrels when he came on. And he stood and he answered the questions. And I'm telling you, he convinced me on a lot of the things. Not all, but he is not the kook on the vaccine issue that everyone makes him out to be, that is used to smear him over and over by people, not you, Stephen, I don't know what you've done, but who haven't done their homework. Do your homework, and then go back and tell me how kooky he is on that subject.
One point real fast, and I'll let Stu jump in. RFK Jr. has been doing the vaccine thing for years, and he's married to a Hollywood progressive, Cheryl Hines. There is a strain, and I always found this interesting, and where you fall on the COVID vaccine or whatever, I don't really care. But they were, the media was content to let kind of Trump's MAGA base, who said, I'm not taking the vaccine, and kind of put a microphone in their face. There is a strain of anti-vaccinism running through Hollywood that is notorious, and it's happened for 20 years, from Jim Carrey to everyone. And RFK was kind of a face of that. He was a guy who would go on The Daily Show, and he would be a guy who was invited on MSNBC and, Dylan Radigan's old show, and some of the, and Keith Olbermann was running the roost over there. And so this idea that it's so far out beyond that's a far right issue. No, there is it's one of these worst kept secret things about anti-vaxxism in Hollywood. And they were content to kind of let, the media focus on Trump's base on part of that. And so he's kind of, the thing with RFK is he opens a lot of, like you said, skeletons into that world, into Hollywood, into kind of the far left environmentalism.
And he himself he's not a perfect man, not a perfect man. And look, if for Republican voters, he's not a Republican, and he's not going to vote the way Republican voters want him to vote if they put him in office as commander in chief on a lot of issues. But that's not how Trump is talking about using him, Stu. So your thoughts on the debate that we just had?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can look at this, and there's tons of stuff. I mean, RFK Jr. has far left policies on stuff like global warming that, like, I find to be absolutely terrible. But we're in a very tight campaign here right now. And before, when Biden was in the race, if you looked at the polls, and I did a big analysis of this on the show one day, going through all the polls, and it was a slight advantage for Donald Trump when it came to the RFK voters. They were taking a few more voters from Joe Biden. Once Harris entered the race, that changed in a big way. The people who were on the fence, that were normally left-wing voters, that were normally vote Biden, but couldn't deal with him being, incoherent and falling upstairs over and over again. Those people that were repulsed by that, they decided to find a home with RFK. When Harris came in, for a lot of those people, that whatever issues they had there were cured. And a lot of those people went back to Harris. Now what we see in polls post, when Harris is actually in the race, you see a much larger effect negatively toward Trump. And so when you look at this poll, if you go back to mid-June, Donald Trump was around 44.6% of the vote. And right now he's at about 44.2. His support has really not changed over that period at all. What has happened is there's been a rise from Kamala Harris, some of that with the positive media attention, obviously, and the comparative differences between him and Biden, but also some of those people from RFK coming over. So to act, and I think the media is trying to do this, and they're trying to say, oh, it's no big deal. He's not a factor. He was down at 4%. Well, what I saw was about 1.2 points moving toward Donald Trump. You're in a situation where the entire range of outcomes in this election is probably Trump +4 to Trump -4. That's how close this is. Taking a point and moving that toward Donald Trump in this situation is massively important. It is a big factor. And whether you think, he's right or wrong on the issues, or you don't like what Tulsi Gabbard says about this or that, these are important things in a political situation. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump has all the power that if RFK does something crazy or Tulsi does something he doesn't like, he can always fire them if they become part of the administration. If I'm Donald Trump, I'm very happy about this.
Yeah, I think it's big. And I think both of them, for different reasons, represent a growing factions within the Republican Party. And some people in the Republican Party are going to have to acknowledge that and get used to that fact that if they want it to be big tent, the kind that can win elections, they have to welcome new people and new views on board. Stu, Stephen, great to see you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow, Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia for the very first time right here.